the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. All board members are present. First up is the April 11th public meeting minutes. Edits?
I had a few actually.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Oh.
If you would, please.
Hold,
Sorry.
please.
Yeah, hold, please. All right, what you got, Sean?
What's that?
Yeah.
Page 2, line 66 to 68. There was no vote shown. So it just said the motion was made. To approve the schedule.
You mean,
Like how we voted.
the vote, yeah.
Did we vote?
I honestly,
I think we did.
but just
Motion.
normally it would be the motion passed by unanimous vote, which I
Yeah.
don't really know that, but.
That is
I-
the case.
That is,
I had some concerns, I think I raised, but I
Yeah.
still voted.
Right,
in the
to-
affirmative.
Okay.
I think everybody did.
we all did, yes. Good catch.
A little nitpicky, but page 3, 87 to 89, I don't think it has to all be italicized.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's just the first update. And
That's my kind of nitpicking, so thank you.
Just to back up, Sean.
Yeah.
When, starting in 70, when we were having the discussion about the state grant, I thought that we had a fairly significant conversation, about that. I just didn't remember if it was public or not public.
We didn't go into details in public, and we didn't go
Okay,
into,
so
we
the
didn't go into
detailed
non-public.
conversation was in non-public.
We didn't
Well-
even talk about it in detail in non-public at that meeting.
So the way the notes aren't set up, or minutes aren't set up to be like a play-by-play, it's supposed to be a summary. So if
Okay.
there are pieces missing here from the summary, we can add those. But just so you know why, we did, I agree with you, we did have a big discussion, but,
But we also run the risk
correct.
of it being information you may not want easily referenced.
Right, that's why I
From a
just, I
security
wasn't
point of
remembering
view.
which was which. I just wanted to bring that up.
So are there we didn't talk about the security updates in non-public either. So if you feel like something is significant here that,
Like a general
it would have been done in
sentence
public.
or something.
it would have been done in public. So if you feel like something's missing and this didn't capture the essence of the conversation,
No, based on what you said, I'm good.
okay.
Did you have
And then-
another one?
Just one more, lines 129 and 130. The section says Sean mentioned recent comments that Governor Sununu made. I think it was regarding overall state enrollment, not student enrollment. So just comments that Governor Sununu made regarding state enrollment population.
State student enrollment though, or?
No, it wasn't student related.
It was
I-
population.
The population of the state's population had increased. Didn't
Okay, so
necessarily
not
mean
enrollment
student.
at all?
Right.
Okay, all right, so a state population.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Our next meeting is May 23rd here at Belmont Elementary School. Next up, we have student club presentation. I don't know who to hand it over to, but I'm guessing in the back.
Hi.
Hi.
So second grade took on a big project this year, and it was our big year to do this project. It came about because I was on Facebook and scrolling down, and there did it, and we went through the whole process of asking the students, what do you think we should write about? And we did a few polls about that, and voted, and decided to write about, where they would go in the world, so if they could go anywhere. And kids went through the whole process of planning and revising and editing, and then finally sending it off to the publishers, and it went off in a big box, and the kids were really excited, and we'll let some of the kids talk about it now. Okay, guys ready, Jack?
This year, our second grade classes took on a project of publishing a class book. Our topic was, where would you go? Each student decided if they could go anywhere in the world, where would they go? Some second graders chose places where family lived. Some chose places less explored. Some chose places they wished to go. We also drew an illustration to go with our writing. We want to thank Mrs. Van Kiel for all of her help, work, and helping us with this project.
All right, thank you. So as the boys said, Mrs. Van Kira, the art teacher, was part of this. We kind of roped her into it also, and we were really glad that we did because the illustrations came out awesome. And we're gonna have these boys share their page out of the book. So each class got their own copy of the book for free. All right, you ready? Go ahead.
If I could go anywhere, I would go to outer space to see the planets and to see the rocket ships and to see the alien ships and to see meteors and to see satellites.
Show them their picture.
Oh, whoops.
Nice,
Very nice.
It's upside down.
very nice.
Right, good job. So then after that, it said, Harper, where would you go? And it kept, followed that pattern. Harper did her illustration and writing, and then it just kept going. And Mr. Hill and Mrs. Van Kura and, oh yeah. And Mrs. Johnson added their pages too. Aiden, you want to smile? And Mr. Hill.
If I could go anywhere, where would I go? I would go to the dinosaur ages so I can get a pet raptor. Annabelle, where would you go? I copied it. And then I put my paper on it and then it went through.
Very
Nice.
Using
Very
your
nice.
resources.
Nice work.
So we are gonna continue with this, in the years to come, because we thought it was a really great, thing for the kids, and they feel really proud of their writing, and, so we're just gonna keep going with it. We had, at the end, when the books all came in, we had a book reveal, so all of the classes came together into one classroom, and they all read their pages of the book while the, smartboard showed the illustrations, so it was really special, and they felt really like they were real authors and illustrators, so that was cool. And then we had a popcorn and popsicle party for our publishing, big to-do at the end, which they loved. And Best was kind enough to make sure that all students would be able to get a copy of the book, even if their parents hadn't signed up, so that was really great on their part to help us with that. And there was a few parents that also just, decided to pay it forward and, purchase another book, so, yeah.
Well done.
This was a fun project for us. That's all I have.
I have a question.
Sure.
So as we sit here in the library, will a copy be retained here for future classes to go back and look at?
That's a good question, because we did talk about that, and we don't have one for this is like our classroom copy, but in the future, I think that would probably be a good idea to have one in the library. Yeah.
Other questions?
Just wondering what that young man would do with the raptor if he had a
Are you wondering what his parents would do?
That's what I was wondering.
You probably don't wanna know what Eden would do with a rat.
You could have a therapy raptor at school.
I could watch it do an epic dinosaur battle.
Do you boys want to say anything else about the project?
No.
Did you like it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Should we do it again?
Yes.
Okay.
great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, this was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up is public communication. Does anyone from the public like to address?
I would like to address, my name is Amira Provost, and I am the BHS robotics coach. I'm one of the coaches. And I know robotics keeps being brought up at the school board meeting after the deliberative session. I think there might be a little confusion of what we're asking as far as the funding. The funding, the $12,500, is not just for BHS, it's for BHS and the middle school. So because the granting, there was also confusion on, like, when we found out as coaches, I found out January 14th. And the reason I know that date is because that was when we were hosting the Belmont Bot Bash, and Joe Wernig from the middle school was telling us about the grant is changing and possibly going away. And that's when we were in panic mode, and that's when we had like 2 to 3 weeks to come up with a speech and to present the amendment to the school board. It wasn't meant to catch anybody off guard. It wasn't meant to, say gimme, gimme, gimme. It's just meant to cover what we think we could be losing because we can't register teams and move forward with the season. Our season already started. So we have payments pending on registering the team that we just sent to Worlds. I don't know if you saw, did anybody see the Facebook posts?
Yes.
I do the Facebook posts. Adrian DeHaze, who's the former robotics coach, former robotics teacher, he's the current robotics coach. He does the Instagram pages. So we like to keep everybody in the loop. We're doing more social media this year than we did in past years, just so that everyone can see the amount of work that goes in. Our kids have put in over 4,300 hours this last season. We're expecting, we went from 3 kids to 20 kids checking out the program, and we had on average about 12 to 13 kids stay every single week to work on the robots. And we went from 2 teams to 4 teams. We went from 5 competitions to almost 10 competitions. So there's a lot of costs. There are known costs. There are known figures, and we estimate spending. We do spend all the grant money, and we also have to supplement additional income or funding through sponsorships and any donations that we get from parents. So it's not that we're asking for $12,500 for just the high school. That is for the high school and middle school kids, and that could affect up to 60 kids total. We are hosting on May 24th, as long as we get the cafeteria facility. I'm still trying to verify that we're gonna get that. As long as we get the cafeteria at the high school, on the 24th, we're gonna be hosting a meet and greet. We're gonna invite all the middle school kids up to see who wants to do the VRC, the high school competition. We're also gonna have our existing high school kids. We will have our playing field set up, and we will have at least 3 or 4 robots battling it out on the field so that you guys can kind of get an idea of what a season consists of. And I also wanted to come here today, so if any of the board members had any questions about what we do as coaches and what we're asking for, I'm here to answer any questions that I can.
I know all about it, I was a coach over in Winnisquam, so I know exactly the time and everything that goes into it.
Any more?
Questions?
Okay.
I have a
Alright.
question, actually.
Yes.
So, I know that everyone expects the grant to come in, but as we all know, grants are not guaranteed forever.
They're not guaranteed.
So if it does come in and you do have potentially double the money, what kind of things can you do with that for the robotics programs for both the high school and the middle school?
Funny you should ask. This will help, like I said a few minutes ago, not only do we get the grant, we also have to get sponsors to help fund additional costs. So we can actually send kids to signature events in other states, in other cities. Those registration fees alone per team can run anywhere from $250 to $600 per team. So we could afford to take our teams to bigger competitions with nationally recognized robots. 603B, so I just got back from Dallas on Sunday, and 603B, which is the top performing team for the high school, they ranked number 19th in their division out of 79 robots, and that there were 10 divisions at Worlds. So they were ranked in the top 190 robots. Only 800 out of the 20,000 robots for this season actually were invited to Worlds. So if you look at 190 out of 20,000, they ranked in the top 1% of the world. And we are putting Belmont on the map. We're only one of, there were only 2 other schools that sent teams to Worlds from New Hampshire and Vermont, and we were one of them. Coaches, all the other coaches from the region, they know me, they know DeHaze, they know our team. So we are becoming nationally recognized. Our team number, I had kids from the Iowa competition, from the nationals competition, come up to me because they recognized me from Iowa when they were at Worlds. So we're getting recognized, and we can send more kids to more competitions. We can register more teams. We can go from 4 teams to 6 or 7 or 8 teams. We can also help give the middle school more funding, so if we have extra funding, we could divert some of that funding to the middle school. I don't know what's gonna happen after Mr. Warnig retires. I don't know how the middle school program is gonna be run. This could also help us pay for more supplies and get more of the latest stuff instead of just, we cap out what our supplies and parts run. 2,000, maybe we can get 4,000. We can also do more community involvement. We're already helping the Winnisquam. You mentioned Winnisquam. There's a new Winnisquam coach that is there for the last 2 years. He's been trying to get his team up and running. So he actually came to us twice. He visited the high school to see how we're set up. So we can help. We can do a lot more community outreach to help other schools build up their programs with the extra funding that we would get. So there's a lot of different things that we could do.
So, we will be discussing, budget adjustments at the May 23rd meeting.
Yes.
Where we had I just wanna make sure you're aware of that. So that is on the agenda for the May 23rd meeting, to look at, anything that we need to look at for next year.
I had watched the video for the April 11th meeting, and I know that there was discussion of putting the $12,500 in a general fund and possibly diverting it to some of the sports. One of the things that we do is, with the amount of hours that we do, with the competitions, the tournaments, the playoffs, everything that we do, we treat this as a sport. So everything, the requirements for academics, the requirements for everything, we treat it as a sport. And I understand you would want to possibly divert some of the funding to sports if the sports
I don't
need it.
remember that
I don't
conversation.
remember us
I don't
discussing
remember that at all.
diverting to sports. We did discuss that because it's a bottom line budget, so adding the 12,500, as a board, we could look at putting it, anywhere, really. Historically, and I've said this at deliberative and here, that historically we have honored the voters' wishes, but we did need to really think about, we never had the conversation. So
Right.
I don't remember a discussion saying we would divert to sports.
It was, Jay Grafton had asked the question at
Okay.
roughly, I think, the 25-minute mark. Sorry, I just watched the video this
No,
weekend.
that's fine.
I think it was about the 25-minute mark where he had asked the question in the video.
Okay.
And said, and basically throwing it out there, should the money go to sports? So we can appreciate if the money would go to sports, but at the same time, we see ourselves as a sport. We also see ourselves as a solution to some of the testing issues, where the testing rates have declined, enrollment has declined. If we provide a program like robotics to the school district, that could entice kids to come back to the school district. That could help bring up what we teach. That could help, especially the high school level, it could help some of the standardized testing results. We are a very student-centered policy, so the students are the ones that drive and run the program. It's not necessarily us. So the students are very motivated, and especially now that some of them got that taste of Worlds, you know, they wanna do it year after year. They wanna be the best. Any other questions?
And thank you for clarifying, because it was a member of the public who had brought up diverting it to
Oh, okay.
sports. So I just want to clarify, that's why the board was like, I don't remember a discussion around us
Oh.
diverting it to sports, so just so you know. That's,
Okay.
so I
My bad.
appreciate, no, I appreciate the clarification, that's why we asked it, so thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right.
Congratulations
you.
at Worlds.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw it was great. And thank you for sharing all those photos, I love seeing that.
You're welcome.
Any other from the public? Or,
Can I put in
yes.
a request, if that's possible? Can we move the YRBS report up before we get to the principal's report, since we have Melissa Allen here?
Absolutely.
If that's okay with the board?
Yes, and I appreciate you saying who she is, because I realized, and I could have interrupted, but I didn't. I actually don't know who the teachers were who were in here, so I think next time I'll, who was in here? Mr. Hill.
Second grade teacher, so Mrs. Stewart was the one who took the lead in the speaking, and then Mrs. Claremont and Mrs. Van Nostrand.
Okay, thank you. So, I like to know who names to faces to, so, thank you. Okay, so yes, welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Allen, I'm the SAP within the district. So I primarily I split my time between the high school and the middle school, and working with most of the at-risk kids. And so I'm here to talk about the YRBS data that we got. So it runs typically 2 years behind. So we just got 2021. And so in summary, a lot of our numbers actually look pretty good as far as risky behavior, substance use, binge drinking, alcohol, those sorts of things, vaping. Vaping, it was actually almost in half, which is pretty impressive. But we have to remember that we were in a pandemic at that time, and kids were home with their parents, and so that could explain some of that. I think the most concerning part of the report was what students had been reporting about mental health concerns. A lot of students had reported feeling hopeless for 2 or more weeks, where it's affecting their lives. A lot more students were reporting suicidal ideation, so having thoughts or a plan of wanting to end their life. And there was also an increase in suicide attempts. So what we're doing is, of course, myself in the building, and we do have our social worker who addresses the mental health needs within the building. I do suicide prevention education in the middle school. We also do some of that in health classes. But I think that was the glaringly obvious deficit. The rest of our stuff looked okay, looked pretty good as far as risky behavior.
Question.
Yes.
So in crunching the numbers, when you were just talking about mental health and suicide, there's been approximately 36 attempts? That seems really high.
I have the whole report with exact numbers.
Yeah, I mean, 25% of the students surveyed, which was.
It was 200
should be that high, I'm just asking. I mean, the other piece that I thought was pretty alarming was what's the sexual activity? Cause when you crunch those numbers, it was like 65% of students, who were active, were reported they were physically forced.
Yes.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, that number was pretty high too. The ones who had reported that, basically had reported sexual assault. No, so I only have, this must be in a different report. I only have the, percentages, but that does sound right. And for what we see as far as the counselors, that does sound pretty consistent. I mean, we're evaluating people, I wouldn't say all the time, but we're evaluating people pretty consistently who maybe have made statements. And also, of course, this survey is self-reported too. So that could mean someone who self-harmed and they feel like that was an attempt to end their life, when maybe a professional or someone else may not think that that's an attempt to end their life. So we also have to remember that it's student reported too.
Gotcha, yeah, so so those are not reported to.
No, this is
those
just
schools.
data from the survey that
Just
students
self-reported
take
students, okay.
confidentially
Got it.
in the school during the school day.
Is
And-
there any, has anyone looked into any sort of grants for like mental health for students? I actually had a parent from my daughter's class approach me who works at Riverbend in Concord, and he had indicated that there are a ton of grants available for students. I didn't know if that had been looked into at all.
I'm gonna divert that one to Tanya.
If it certainly is something we could explore, and we have worked with area agencies. But it is important to remember that this is from 2021.
Absolutely.
So the kids were home, so, partial at that time. So it will be interesting to see what the next.
The 2023, what they
date,
just took.
correct. Will be important data to look at.
And I do think that there are lasting effects on mental health, given what these students have just been through too. They were stuck at home, and, for most of us, our children were in healthy environments where they were getting, fed and they were being supported, and some of these students were not in healthy environments where they were treated well, and that can really have long-term effects on, their mental health.
So this is just high school students, not
This
middle
is
school.
just high school students. We've looked into doing it at the middle school. It's pretty costly. When I did look into it, it was costly because of, most of the money was for the paper to actually do it and print enough copies and things like that. But now that it's done electronically, I'm waiting to hear back if we can do it at the middle school. Aaron Pope was certainly interested in that, just so we
And
can
then-
track it a little better.
Did this go to all students, and then 263 were the ones that elected to respond?
Yes, so it is completely optional. Parents can also opt out of it. For the 2020, I don't remember opt-outs for 2021, but in 2023, we didn't have any parents opt out. But students don't have to take it if they don't want to.
There was a comment in here about, under the mental health section, about 55% of students never or rarely got the help they needed when they felt sad, empty, hopeless, angry, or anxious. I don't know what the question is, but I'm assuming they asked for help. And that's the answer they got, right? After asking for help, I didn't get the help or whatever.
So that's how I interpret the question,
Okay.
yes, that they didn't get the help that they needed. Unfortunately, some of these questions, as you just read, it's really wordy, and so, a student reading it, it's subjective, it's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
guess
interpreted
I
how
wasn't
they-
clear on whether they asked for help and they didn't get it, or they weren't even comfortable and they obviously didn't get the help.
It could mean either. I think we do know about the stigma with mental health, and we know that it's really hard asking for help. So that may play a part in it, that students want to ask for help. We also have a shortage of resources in our state as well for mental health outside of schools.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, the numbers are great. I've been on the board long enough to see this 5 or 6 times probably if you do it every year. I guess my concern is, 55% felt they asked for help, they needed help, and they didn't feel they got it. What part falls on the home dynamic and what part falls on the school district? I don't know what that percentage is.
Yeah.
But then, the part on the school district, how do we help? Like, what do we do? Is it hiring more people? Is it training our staff? I don't know, but, as great as the numbers are to look at, we definitely have to have some takeaways as to what we can do as a school district to assist these students.
I also thought the family dynamics was interesting, where 37.6% of students have lived with someone who's having a problem with alcohol or drugs. Like, that's a significant amount of students that have a difficult home life, as well as 40.2% have lived with someone who's depressed, mentally ill, or suicidal, which could go hand in hand, but.
Absolutely, and we have to remember too, when this survey was taken, it was taken winter of 2021, so like schools, we weren't even in completely full-time. So then we think about how a pandemic affects a family and financially and stress, and some people don't always have the healthiest coping skills too.
So, along Alice's line of questioning a little bit, so how are we addressing or expanding related to positive mental health? You may not know the answer, but you recommend a trauma-informed approach. I don't remember if our staff has been trained in trauma-informed.
So we did, I believe it was 4 years ago, we had Cassie Ackley that came in and did some training with the entire district. And then we also did a district-wide book study on trauma-sensitive schools. I believe it was the spring after that as well. And then we ended up bouncing out due to COVID.
Yeah.
And we haven't brought that back at this point. District-wide as a training opportunity, it's something we definitely should be looking at based on these results.
These results, and then it makes me think about the trauma, even Canterbury Elementary School has been experiencing with the loss of a staff, or the whole district, the loss of a staff member. I was happy to see, support dogs were brought, like lots of different strategies, so it just also highlighted, we're all dealing with a lot of trauma, everybody, adults and students alike. So this highlighted for me, I thought we'd had Cassie Ackley, but maybe reinvigorating some of those discussions to support our students and staff.
And this ties into Alice's point about potentially looking at grant funding, to bring those resources in, because they are costly.
They are costly, so we'd have.
Worth it.
Yeah, well worth it.
We do have a parent at CES, who works at Riverbend and actually approached me about it, and.
So Riverbend would work for Canterbury, but it wouldn't work for middle and high.
We may want to actually reach out to him because it's some sort of reciprocity, I feel like, but there's a chance.
Yeah, no, I just think we may have to look at.
Belmont's in the Lakes Region catchment area, so that's what's tricky about our district, is that there's in 2 different catchment areas for mental health.
But usually if it's available at one community health, mental health center, it's
Some sort of
potentially,
reciprocity with
but
another one.
we may have to apply both places.
Right, yep, and we have access to Health First too, like the resources in Laconia for mental health as well.
I have one more question.
Sure.
In regards to the alcohol questions, it indicates that binge drinking is 4 or more for a female and 5 or more for a male.
Mhm.
Why is there a difference?
There's a difference because body size, how our bodies are just biologically built to process things differently. It comes down to also to body size and the ability to create tolerance, and genetics play a role, all of that. That's not a standard that we've developed or anything, that's national, like what the YRBS, what is considered binge drinking.
I would think for a kid that your gender wouldn't matter, that it's the act of multiple.
Yes, yes. that is the same number for adults been drinking, your age in that number, isn't a factor.
In YRBS, this survey is from where?
It's federal, they do it nationally.
From is it CDC or is it somewhere? Do you remember?
I believe it's the CDC that does it. When I was setting it all up this year, I was working with people across the country to set it up. So.
And I believe why I asked the question is I've seen some national results coming out which are very similar, related to mental health as well.
Yeah.
Not so much the drinking question though, I know that is national.
And it should be noted too that our data is not skewed or it looks any different than the Lakes region or the state. You know, everyone saw the drop in vaping, everyone saw the drop in drinking in the same way, and then everyone saw the spike in mental health as well.
It is out of the CDC as well.
Yeah, I think in the past we've seen, I'm looking at Sean, he might remember, we saw compared to the state data. So that's always interesting, but I can look that up, but I just.
I have, in the report I did, I did compare some of the data, and then I have,
Yeah.
I have the whole 100-page thing too, if anyone, and Mr. Tercey as well, we have that.
So is there an electronic version of that?
Yes, yep.
I would definitely like a copy. I have copies from all the other years. So, just getting back to like moving forward.
Right.
Like no matter what we do now, it's not gonna be reflected in the 2020
Not in the
report that
2020,
we'll get. But I don't know enough about the average school day when we talk about, you know, more education. When are we gonna do that education? Like, is it part of a regular class, or is it part of, you know, their homeroom or whatever they call it now at the high school?
Oh, they have TLT.
The middle school, what are we doing? When are we doing it? Like, when does this education actually take place?
That's the difficult piece, is trying to carve out time while you still need to focus on the academic part of coming to school.
Yeah.
So it's challenging when we know that there's the needs there. It's a matter of carving out the time in the 6-hour day that, 6.5-hour day that students are in school. It's very challenging. Time is an issue.
So to piggyback on that, and here's a question that you ask yourself. When I was out in Idaho and having to do research for my master's program, I came up with the idea, or wanting to study content education versus character education. Because for 25 years now, there's been a huge push for character education, so students know that stealing is bad and driving drunk is bad and doing drugs is bad. And what I was finding, as you followed students as they aged out into college or even out of college, is the more character that you put into the curriculum, you subtracted content. And so as students got older, you found you could survey them, you could ask them questions and say, well, should you drink and drive? Well, the answer is no. Should you steal? Well, the answer is no. But then there was a lack of the content to support the lifestyle that would not require stealing or not require some of the other dangerous behaviors. And so it was a very interesting, thesis idea, that there's no way that one person could do it all on their own. But the preliminary data was showing that it's gonna be a very delicate balance as how much extra stuff in for the term that I'm using, character education, you cram into the day, because what are you then leaving behind? That's gonna have just as many detrimental effects 2, 5, 10 years down the line.
I guess I hear what you're saying, but I think we're in I'm gonna call it a crisis, my words, in the last couple of years, in terms of if kids' mental health or youth's mental health issues are not addressed, or there's drinking, all kinds of things, they're not able to access their education. So to me, it's different than the prevention pieces all related to don't drink and drive, don't steal, and I know that's a little tongue in cheek,
Right.
but,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
get there's a balance, but my bigger concern is, you know, and so you triangulate this or correlate it with Mr. Finch's report related to, credit recovery and how kids are doing in school, and then I get even more concerned. So I totally get what you're saying, but I don't know that tipping point and I don't know where it goes, but it concerns me if students are feeling like they have nowhere to go, if they're feeling depressed, if they're attempts at suicide, and I get there's a balance between home and school, but I don't know how we reconcile that, because it's, to me, we're seeing qualitative data that would show there might be a correlation between the two. And so how can we address learning loss in all of our kids, let alone moving forward, if we're not addressing the whole student? I don't know what that means for us as a board.
The whole student involves the parent, and that's,
100%
and I mean,
agree.
I dealt with that when I was, principal up in Pittsburgh. We had parents that needed to be taught how to be parents. And we had parents that couldn't do a 5th grade or a 6th grade curriculum. And so then we were teaching the parents how to do the curriculum so then they could help their kids with homework, because, homework matters, with repetition. And I think the answer to your question is somehow, and I don't know the absolute, right answer, but we gotta get parents involved, whether willingly or bring them in kicking and screaming.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily, you and I might not characterize it the same way, but I do think it speaks to a larger community issue regarding families needing support. And if families aren't able to support their children academically, I think there are lots of things they can do to support their child's education. So, yeah.
And we've put on, we did a parent night at the middle school about how to keep your kids safe on the internet. I mean, we really couldn't have done more to get the students in.
How many parents showed up to that?
8.
Yeah.
We provided dinner. I had solicited gift cards and gift certificates from the community for people who went. Like, there was incentives, like monetary incentives for going. We provided childcare. It just, so, we want to get parents in more. I would love to do more parent stuff, but what we have done, it's quite laborious for everyone involved, and then to have 8 parents show up was really hard. Bringing this detective in from the seacoast and all of that, and having 8 parents there. That was hard.
And I know we've talked about this. I think we have to think about various ways to engage parents. I think I do some work nationally with this and with my own center. There's COVID fatigue, and there's just to come out is a big deal. So across the state, what I'm seeing in the work with other school districts is everybody's having trouble getting parents to physically come to something. So I know as a board, we've talked about what are different ways we can get information and support out there that isn't always a family member coming into the school. So I just want us to think about multiple strategies as opposed to one. And I know prior to the pandemic, we were really building some of that out, and I know during the pandemic, we did some virtual pieces that would allow families to access information at any point in time. So.
I agree. I created an Instagram page, and I just for my position outside of the district, and a Facebook page with information, and making infographics, so the information is very pointed. Sending out blast emails to families, like maybe they can't read it that night because there's so much happening, but maybe when they're in a predicament in 3 months, they're gonna be like, I do remember seeing that in my inbox. So trying to reach people in different ways, because you're right, we all have a lot going on, and some of the families here have even more stressors than the average person.
So is there anything you would need from this board in terms of, to support, or has administration, or, Michael, maybe to you, like, as we look into, dare I say, next budget season, since we just finished, but I think we may need to look at, I don't know what that is, but grants, other opportunities to support staff and students.
I mean, as a mental health professional, I think the pipe dreams would be having more mental health professionals in the school, having more social workers in the school and that sort of thing, but of course there's that balance there. But as far as me specifically doing my education piece and the students that I'm meeting with, that risky population, I'm okay, but I think the biggest thing is more mental health resources within the school. Because sometimes I think that the mental health piece falls onto school counselors, which of course it's part of their job, but it's not their entire job. And so when the kids are younger, you know, they can do more of that hands-on stuff, but sometimes at the high school, they have a lot of other stuff going on too. So sometimes, you know, they're out straight, and then if a student's in crisis and that takes up 3 hours of their day, it would be beneficial just to have more hands on deck there.
I agree with Melissa with the pipe dream. It's better to have more hands on deck and hire more mental health professionals that can work within the schools. I always bring up the challenge of do we have access to those professionals that we would be able to hire to come in? My understanding in the field that's becoming fewer, those numbers are fewer and fewer as the years progress. So we could budget for these things potentially, these resources, but then we can't fill them, and that's a challenge overall. However, that doesn't stop us from trying.
I'm gonna claim ignorance in the field of mental health, but I don't understand, say we have additional resources, and I assume that means people. Like, what do they do in the school? Are students coming to them?
Yes.
How would students know to come to them? Would students be comfortable coming to them? How does that work?
So for me, it took me a little bit of time, but now students seek me out. They know where I am. They know where their school counselors are. They know where our social worker is and how to access them. I have standing appointments with students at both schools during either their intervention or during their TLT at the high school. Same with Laura Piscatella, our social worker, and the school counselors are doing some of that as well. Sometimes teachers refer students that are having a really troublesome time, or they notice that a student is not okay and they ask if they want to come see one of us. They're pretty comfortable coming to us. There's also that level of confidentiality too, and for me specifically, like I have a different level of confidentiality because I'm not a school counselor, and so they feel pretty comfortable coming to me.
I just, as we get to budget season, we talk about staffing and stuff. I'm always fearful of adding staffing that is sitting in an office, busy 50% of the time, when they should be busy 100% of the time.
Sure, and so
if we're hearing, if we were able to hire more people and they were inundated with students coming in, then if there's a need, then we have to seriously consider that.
there's a couple options too. For me, I am in 2 different schools. If I were in one school, there's weeks that I could be very busy in one school all week long, but I've split my time in 2 schools so I can meet the needs of 2 schools and be busy in both schools all the time. And then there's also, like we mentioned, the community agencies earlier, or things like Health First, where they have clinicians who come into our school one day a week or whatever to meet the needs, and they have a list of 7 kids they meet with every time, or whatever that may be. And so that's another option to meet those needs, is that it's not our staff, it's providing services to our students, but it's not someone that we keep busy.
I would just want to make sure that they were scheduled,
Right.
It wasn't like,
Right.
I've got 2 on my schedule today, 2 students.
Yes.
It's like, well, what do you do the rest of the time?
I mean, thinking about the high school in particular, if we had a therapist in there, you know, 1 day a week, we could probably fill a therapist 3 days a week there. You know, we, you know, have started creating a list, cause we've talked about, you know, someone from Health First coming in. The list is lengthy of kids who need more than we can give. Like, I provide support, I can provide crisis intervention, but I'm not a therapist in the school. You know, I'm not meeting with people to work on their past trauma. I'm helping them with coping skills or helping them process a particular situation, but I'm not meant to be like a long-term solution doing a clinical something, like a therapeutic strategy with them.
And so that's why we have the memorandum of understanding for Health First coming in, but it's up to them too, to provide us a clinician, and they're not always able to do that either.
Well, and we're not paying for that, correct?
No.
Like my understanding is when you do having the clinicians come in, we're not paying for that.
Nope.
It helps Health First also, because transportation and all of those things.
And they're able to bill for those hours the same way they would in their office, with Medicaid and insurance companies and all that, because they are therapists and not school staff.
What is this, like, the makeup of your day? Like, how many days are you at the high school? How many days?
So I'm at the high school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm at the middle school Tuesday, Thursday. I participate in the at-risk teams at both schools. I have a duty at the middle school, which is nice because I get to see the kids outside of just being the person who's doing like crisis stuff. I do education at the middle school and the high school. Like, I get into the health classes. I run an educational course for 6th graders about drugs and alcohol, where we talk really frankly about what drugs are and giving them the tools and how it affects their brain and their bodies so that they can make those best choices moving forward. That goes on for months and months and months to get every 6th grader in for 3 days. And so, talking about timing in the day, I take them out of their UA, so that UA rotation of their music and their art and health and all of that sort of stuff. I meet with kids individually. It can be really unpredictable. So I have kids scheduled. I have kids that seek me out. Sometimes I do like consultation with school counselors, and sometimes it's things you need, you know, sometimes 2 brains is better than 1.
As technology has improved and things have changed, I see ads all the time for like virtual mental health counselors for adults. Is there anything like that available for children that you've heard of? So kids can do through the area agencies or their private therapists. Some are doing virtual. I'm not sure, like, are you talking about like the apps like Better Health and all of those sorts of things? To my understanding is those are for adults. But what's tricky about those is they don't tell you right off like in those ads, but those are self-pay, which can be really challenging too, to my understanding.
And I don't necessarily agree that they're best medium to meet with kids.
I agree, but if something's better than nothing.
Correct.
Yeah, and if a student has already built a relationship with their therapist, maybe in person, like pre-COVID or something, and then they went virtual, it can be effective. And we have kids at the high school who, you know, borrow their counselor's office for an hour and they meet with their therapist electronically. So that happens too sometimes during the day.
I'm assuming space for that is pretty tight if they're giving up an office.
Yeah, so space is always kind of an issue. At the middle school, that's great, we have space. At the high school, we have an office that the social worker and I share, but what's difficult about that is that it's not in the counseling suite. So ideally, like the pipe dreams would be
Where
to
is
be
that
in.
office?
My office, it's down by like transition.
All the way down, yep.
Like, yeah, down by transition in that
Yeah.
corner. And I think that originally happened because for confidentiality purposes, but actually I think being in the counseling suite would be more confidential, because being able to just call a kid down to counseling suite, everyone goes there, scheduling, all of that sort of stuff. And then sometimes we find that students split us, like, because I'm not there with the counselors in that same space. Maybe they go down and they see Ms. Harbrook for a little while, and then maybe they come see me, and I don't know that. So that is one of those spaces, but yes, there are times when the counselors are giving up their offices for various things, meetings, those sorts of meetings.
Any other questions?
This was helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for allowing me to
Thank
come.
you, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now we're circling back up to principals' reports. Any questions about CES's report? I just, whenever they dedicate something to Mr. B, if, we can be notified about that.
Absolutely, yep.
Anything else on CES's report? Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill is here, so if we have questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them.
More of a generic question for, all the administrators is, it's great seeing what's happening and what's going on and all the positives. But, part of our job as the board is to, we have the stuff that's on the horizon. I'm not opposed to, seeing what, Mr. Hill, what your struggles are. If you're experiencing, something that you're really banging your head against the wall in the course of a month or whatever, being able to, to toss that out to us. Not in a way for, us to, scold or anything like that, but just to identify what your challenges are, whether it's yours or Mr. Pope's or, whomever's.
Yeah, so I guess I just reiterate, like, those reports, they have like information for board consideration. There's a section on the bottom of each of them. And I think the intention was kind of what you're saying. It doesn't have to be all, sunshine and roses. If there are troubles that you're having or things that you want, the board to be aware of. In the past, we've had staffing, like, staffing was an issue and it came up like every time under there. But I think that section is intended to be a section to give some of that information as well.
They're not always rosy.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we changed that we actually established a board report form, that form itself, about 6 years ago, I wanna say, to make sure that principals were able to highlight some of the challenges that they have within the building, and that is the section of the board for board consideration. You'll also see, I'm hoping you see somewhat of a shift on these reports where the principals are doing a section that's focusing on some of the core academic areas. So I know that's one of the things that this board was looking for, was to really bring back the discussion around academics, and you're gonna start seeing that in the principal reports. So there is an area on there. They're not always rosy, as Mr. Hill can say. When there's staffing issues or things like that, the principals are more than willing to put that in there for our discussion.
Well, I was happy to see the piece around the literacy work you've been doing, particularly with letters and reaching out to the Department of Ed and all of that, so looking forward to hearing more.
Yeah, for us now, I think with some newer staff members, it's a matter of balance, right? There's so much that they need and so much that's being asked of them. It's trying to bring stuff at a reasonable pace and make sure we can sustain
Right.
the positive when we do make change.
So I have a question, and it's probably not for you, but you're the only administrator here, so I'm gonna ask you. So for yours, you indicate that one of your goals is to have all your teachers enrolled in letters. How come CES doesn't have the same goal?
might, I'm not sure.
There are staff enrolled in the letters program that was brought to us by our special ed coordinator from the state, who got teachers rallied around participating in that, but we have staff members participating in letters training in Canterbury as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, for us, some of it's a response to our data, right?
No, I-
We've been focused on math for a couple of years. And our data literacy shows that's the area we need to focus, so, letters is a pretty extensive effort on the part of a teacher to get through that. It's a 2-year process. So, I mean, I'm fortunate that I talked to the teachers and they were willing to do that. I'm excited about it.
And you've done the administrator training as well, right, or in process?
Yeah, in this process.
And teachers can get a stipend for participating in the letters program, so I'm assuming that's been shared with them.
I have shared that that's on the table. I don't know if it's been passed yet. We haven't been.
It was publicly released at a meeting I was at last week, so I can send it to you, someone. If they do, the early childhood, it's a $500 stipend because that's only a 1 year. But the, teacher program is, if a teacher does the 2 years, it's $1,000.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I would send it to you.
Send it to me. And I heard one of the challenges, particularly around reimbursement for that training with collective bargaining agreements, because the grading on the end of the training doesn't necessarily align with. So we did bring that up to the commissioner, that look more like a pass-fail kind of thing, or because in the collective bargaining agreement, some collective bargaining agreements say a B or better in a course or a workshop or a training that you're taking.
It was released April 12th, but I'll send it to you, so it's hot off the press. So I don't know how that's gonna interact with but it was approved by governor and council on Wednesday.
Did they change it to a pass-fail?
Well, please, stipend policy. Doesn't, on a quick glance, payment, third-party vendor, blah, blah. It actually doesn't mention anything about needing a grade.
So if you could send that to me.
I'll do it right
I'll
now.
sift through it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm like,
I can share it with the principals.
sorry. Any other questions for BES? Okay, BMS. Okay,
I have a question
Yeah.
for BMS, even though no one is here.
well, that's okay,
So-
Mike will bring it back.
In Mr. Hill's report, he had talked about open positions and difficulty, there's, how are we doing at the middle school? Are we fully staffed?
We have 2 behavioral one-to-one positions open at BMS right now.
And it's at no open teacher positions, or?
Some at least, I think I'm aware of.
I don't believe so.
That is good news.
Oh, yes, we do. We have to fill Mr. Warden's position. That's still open.
I didn't know if that counted yet, cause the school year's not over.
We're advertising for
We've
it.
advertised for it. It's a tough position to fill because of the certification requirement.
Is that the same for Mr. Hill's
No, that's.
technology integrator or
That's a
something?
different position.
Okay, well, I knew it was different, but is it the same certification?
Not necessarily.
No, tech integrator is different than tech ed. Only because I had them.
Yeah.
Had to spend all the extra money every 3 years.
Right, how about BHS?
surprised that under the qualifiers, would have been page 1, 2, 3. It looks like out of the high school population, there's approximately 228 failures or class failures. That seems kind of high. Maybe not. I don't know. But I'm also looking at this where at one point it says that a minimum passing grade is a 2.5, but then you can jump into recovery between 2.5 and 2.49, and as a previous teacher, I know kids aren't dumb, and they're gonna take advantage of being able to hop into a recovery at 2.5 or 2 3/4 or whatever that winds up being. But I was, I guess, most surprised at the numbers of failures, but that leads us into whatever conversation we need to have is on the horizon about whether or not we even continue with the competency-based stuff in 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I was equally surprised. I thought the number was going to be high because they alluded to it being high. I would like to know more actually about the numbers, like what the breakdown of those kids, like how many are freshmen, how many are sophomores. I mean, like, where is the?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about this report too, so I wonder if it makes more sense to have Mr. Finch here for a meeting.
Yes, what I'd like to request is that we table that
Yeah.
report for the next meeting, and I'll make sure Matt's here.
Okay, cause I just think it's so.
If we have specific questions, should we send them ahead of time
Yeah,
so he has time to?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
to get
great.
So,
them?
if everybody can email you your
Yep, just
questions.
send me any
Okay,
individual questions you have.
And send them individually
Yeah.
to Michael,
thank you.
that will help.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting Mr. Finch to be here because it seems like this would raise a number of different questions
Questions.
from everybody.
So we'll table this, send questions to Michael, and have a conversation,
Bring it back on the May 23rd meeting.
bring it back on the May 23rd. Okay, board member reports. Anything to report?
I just saw the middle school one there at Maple Syrup thing.
That was
Kinda neat. Glad we were able to bring in 150 gallons or so of sap and help them out with that.
Excellent.
We do not have anything to.
Pass.
Okay. So on the horizon, we've alluded, or actually outwardly talked about, that at the May 23rd meeting, we would have the budget adjustment discussions. There's also the security upgrade for Memorial Building. There's a buildings and grounds technology CIP. Let's see, we're gonna talk about the CIP.
We just bring it back that time of year every year, for
Oh,
just the board to
okay.
see it, have an understanding what's on it.
Debbie's gonna give us a business admin report, so we know where we're at, heading into the last month and a half,
Yeah, the
6
estimate for
weeks.
the
Fund balance.
unexpended fund balance.
Okay, and then we also have the School Boards Association coming.
Yes, Vera Christine will be here that evening.
So I'll say it again, I think the second meeting of the month, I think we need to schedule as much as we can on those first meetings of the month to free up the second meeting of the month for a working meeting or a workshop meeting where we can discuss, what I would like to discuss is academics as a whole.
Right.
I also wonder if we should be including mental health and those types of topics as part of the academics discussion, because they probably go hand in hand. But I would like to restructure our meetings to be more of like a business meeting, first meeting of the month. We can have presentations or whatever, but that second meeting of the month, we wouldn't have as many things on the agenda because we would be discussing think academics.
Right.
That's one
Which I
thought.
think we just need to start to shift some of this around and redo on the horizon if we're gonna do that, which is fine. We just have to spend some time doing that.
I like the June 27th, the business administrator report. We could just get that the first meeting of the month, right? It doesn't have to be the second meeting. Something like that.
Yeah, so it's just a shift where we've always had the business meeting as the second meeting of the month compared to the first meeting of the month. We've done reports on the first meeting of the month, like principal reports.
I wanna
and
clear it
stuff.
all into one.
What's that? Which is fine.
I mean, I think depending on what we have, we could do
Yeah.
that, and there
Yeah.
might be things that,
And things come up, I get that, but I just think we need to put an honest effort into spending quality time talking about, I know Mark has
Well, I
concerns
think
about the
that
grading
was
system.
that March 28th meeting, we said that we were gonna, at some, I forget which meeting in May it was gonna be, that we would begin discussing that, and I'm
Yeah,
not
so
seeing it
I-
on either, agenda or on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, my hope would have been the second meeting of the month, so May 23rd, but we've already kind of started filling that up. And we didn't want to have Barrett come in, so I knew that was gonna pop up, but I don't want to kick down the road too far.
So we're fortunate that there's nothing on here after the second meeting in June.
right,
So maybe we can start
Yeah.
restructuring for July, and maybe it's
Well,
just
that's-
like a draft of what that month would look like. So you could say, okay, like here's what both, like just rough draft of what that would be.
cause I think we have to take the on the horizon
Second.
annual and split it up, because some months work better for it. I mean, I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of credit in that we had the March 28th meeting or whatever date, and we had one meeting in April, right? And now here we are to completely restructure ourselves I'm just saying, like, I agree 100%, I just, and we just added a discussion around Matt's report, credit recovery and all of those things.
And I also, on the 23rd, I've asked Silas to put together some curriculum updates specifically around literacy and math.
Okay,
So
good.
that-
Credit recovery, I would consider that to be
Academic.
one of those second meeting of the month discussions.
So what if we take the annual and we kind of categorize things into like what should be in one or two? And then if you go through it, might give you a better idea.
Right, so we can have, we can work to get that done. That's the collective, Sean and I, Michael and Kim maybe could help too.
It'd also be a good question to pose for Barrett when he's here too. What do other boards do to structure and balance the two,
Right.
business and focus on academics?
Yeah,
As well as the board's role and all of that.
right. Anything else for on the horizon? Okay, volunteer list.
Motion to approve the volunteer list, noting conditionals.
Second. Oh, I'll let you have that.
All right.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay. Board meeting locations.
So
Don't look at me.
you can look at me on this one.
Okay, I'm like, didn't we discuss this?
Yes, you did, yes, you did.
That's what I
And
paid for this meeting.
if you recall at the last meeting, I was asked my opinion as to what we should do, particularly for Belmont locations in general. And I didn't have an opinion at the time. And as I started thinking about it a little bit more, a couple points came to mind for me. One was Randy's point about the fact if we have new board members, give them a map so they understand where the board meeting locations are. Well, those are board members. What about somebody that's trying to come in from the community
Oh,
and
yeah.
speak in public?
Yeah.
How are they gonna know where the Belmont High School library is? It's not the easiest place to get to. Or the Belmont Middle School library. Yes, the elementary school here, it's somewhat of a straight shot. You're not going up any steps. And CES is straightforward, we'd already set that, that's a given. But then the other point came to mind about accessibility for somebody that's handicapped. So at the SAU building, we've installed the push button for somebody that's in a wheelchair or on crutches to automatically open the front door. To be able to come in, we've set up signs that lead to where the meeting is, as well as we've installed a ringer at the elevator. So if we're upstairs, somebody can ring that and I can come down and greet them and bring them up. My concern overall, thinking about this, is if we have somebody that needs an accommodation to get to our meetings, particularly at the middle school and the high school, it's gonna be very difficult. Because first, they might not know where we are in the building, and second of all, access to the elevators, there's elevators there, but we won't know that they're there, that need help to go up these elevators. So I'm thinking more of the access piece, overall for our public to come in and come to our meetings. Do we have a lot of public that come to our meetings? Not necessarily, but I don't wanna run into a situation where somebody can't access the meeting because they can't either find it, or more importantly, they can't get to it if they need some sort of help. So what I rethought when I was rethinking this, the SAU building does make the most sense as a Belmont location because it's easily accessible, particularly for somebody that's handicapped, and it's a good space. So I was just wondering if the board might want to reconsider having that central location in the SAU building for our Belmont meetings. And of course, we could always schedule a meeting in a school if necessary, if we have a big presentation or something that students are putting on. So that was my thought process. Not necessarily looking for action on this, I just wanted to bring it back up and there's consensus. I know our next meeting is set, for the elementary school here, and then CES is next month, so we have some time to decide, but I wanted to bring it back up to the board, just to let you know that I had some thoughts after our last meeting about the locations. And maybe prompt a discussion as to what people think about my opinion at this point. Or not.
If the aim is to do this for the public, should we ask the public their opinion?
It's up to the board.
I actually had a question for Mr. Hill. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, we're at your school right now. I'm curious what the principals think. Back in the day, a long time ago, the principals actually got food. They ordered pizza. They had to pick up the food. There was food for the meetings. And I remember Mary running around because there wasn't a place that was even nearby CES. I think it was a pain for the principals to host the school board meetings each month. I don't know if there's anything now that is cumbersome or a problem, and whether you, as a principal, want to have the meetings at the school, or I guess I'd be interested in what the principals think. And you're the only one here, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's not obviously the first time I'm hearing it, maybe not obviously, but it's the first time I'm hearing it, so I don't know that I've thought about it a lot, but what I do appreciate is the board walkthroughs we have each year, so that we can have a chance to talk about the issues and the challenges we're facing with buildings and grounds and things like that, so you can see what we're dealing with, but beyond that, I would leave that to you guys.
I would also say from a custodian standpoint, that has to set this up every night and then break it down in the morning before students are coming in to access the library, as well as moving Hootie around. That's a lot easier than when we had the big cart that we were moving around, so it's much set up the CES library to live stream, we could set up the upstairs in the SAU room to live stream as well. So as for staffing, as for our resources to set up meetings, it would be much more convenient if you had one location in each of the two towns.
I mean, I had originally proposed having all meetings at the SAU. I think the board's pretty clear that they wanna have meetings at CES. Now, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I mean, I can go both ways. For the Belmont ones.
I could too, but I guess the other thing I would say is, there's nothing to say we have to meet in the library. I know, I'm just saying in terms of there are other, like cafeteria, I know that runs into driver's ed, like I get it, there's logistics, but,
The difficulty with the cafeteria is that you have to make sure that's broken down early in the morning because we have breakfast,
Yeah.
so breakfast. So that's a challenge as well.
so, I don't think this is up for action.
It's not, I don't necessarily know if it needs action. I mean, we have an opportunity to change locations
Right,
at any
anytime.
time, quite honestly. I wanted to bring it back up to the board because I
So-
had some thoughts after our meeting, that I wanted to share with everybody, particularly around the access.
I knew Michael's thoughts going into this meeting, and I still don't have an opinion either way. Like, I don't know, I could go either way. I see both sides.
I think if we decide to continue to have the meetings here, we're gonna have to establish some signage. We're gonna have to
Yes.
establish, because, as I said, I wanna make sure that people can access our meetings if they're coming into a building. They know where the meeting is, they know where the elevator is, they know how to use the elevator.
Yeah.
More importantly, someone should be going down to potentially greet them if they need help getting in the elevator. That's what
I understand.
that's what I'm really focusing on here.
I don't wanna flip-flop too much, but maybe just try it, see how it goes.
I see value in a central location for, you know, for all meetings. You know, if we were to do the, you know, if we were even to contemplate the SAU being, you know, full-time meeting, then I would very quickly, you know, put out on the table that the Canterbury attendees, should be given some mileage.
Well, we have to be in Canterbury, so we can't do it in Belmont, cause Debbie
Yeah.
read us the bylaws.
Oh, gotcha, okay. never mind.
Right, remember
Yep.
the
Yep.
bylaws?
No, I completely forgot about that, you're
It
right.
would just be for the Belmont.
The Belmont, but yeah, I would agree with you typically, but,
So I do see both sides, however, like, I would not have thought about putting that book in the library if I wasn't sitting here in the library. And when we were here last year and the outside was not to your liking, it was because we came here that we were able to get that fixed. So that's the only thing is, if we're not gonna be in the schools, then we're not gonna see what's going on in the schools. To Mr. Hill's point, they do a walkthrough yearly, but I'm assuming that's only with buildings and grounds. So those of us that aren't in buildings and grounds would never come into the schools.
Personally, I'd like to get into the schools at least a couple times a year just to be able to observe.
Yeah, it's neat, like at the high school, they have that cool art stuff in front.
so, which is true, we have to think about though, our role as a board relates to policy, like, so we have to be careful about the word observation, because we're related to policy, superintendent evaluation, I remember the third. Budget, the biggest thing, budget. So I'm just saying in terms of our role, I'm not saying what, cause it's true, like if we didn't come here, I wouldn't know.
I'm leaning towards going to all the schools,
Yeah,
sticking with what we're doing.
yeah,
And like I said,
That's
I
what I
see
mean.
both sides of it.
yeah. Yeah, I do too, but I do like.
Also, I would ask, like, in regards to the younger children presenting, are they more comfortable presenting here in their old school, in a place that's familiar, than they would necessarily maybe not be in the same building, which is kind of sad.
Oh, jeez,
I think the
Michael.
parents.
Kids
Yeah.
don't care.
So-
Taking them to elementary
They're
school.
just excited.
So
They know.
we're,
Right.
right now, we're set for May
Just look at bright
23rd.
things and art.
And then we're in Canterbury in June. So, thank you, Michael, we can all,
Just wanted to share my opinion.
Thank
I'll work
you.
on some signage.
okay, thank you.
Remember.
Okay, we can acknowledge the resignation that's in the packet. It's for information.
Is there any discussion about that position? Just gonna stick with what we're doing?
Well, if we, want to have that discussion, as long as it's not, we just moved it to a part-time art position. Previously, it was split between the elementary schools, Belmont and Canterbury.
A full-time position for the two schools, and then we established this year, it's the first year that had a dedicated art teacher to Canterbury, part-time.
So, I forget the resignation was for the end of the year, right? So are we gonna post for that position
Absolutely.
immediately?
Mhm.
Come up with a plan if we have trouble? I'm just concerned about a part-time position, finding somebody.
Yeah, we had that concern originally, and we were fortunate that we were able to hire the teacher that we had in place there.
So we'll see what we.
We'll see what that's what we budgeted for as a part-time position.
Do we know if that was a factor?
Yeah, she went on to take a full-time position.
But not in an elementary school.
No.
But, yeah,
I think just for perspective, I think we would lose our art teacher if we continued along the path where we were.
oh, if we switched back. you
Yeah, I
mean?
wouldn't
Working two
recommend,
buildings.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't recommend that.
We actually just hired a music teacher, and she's coming here because she's tired of working in 4 buildings at a time, so.
Nice.
Working multiple buildings at a time.
Yeah. Okay, public communication and correspondence. We added this to the end in case anyone in the public has any comments for the end of the meeting, based on what we discussed or anything else. No pressure. Okay, seeing none, hearing none. So we can do the approval of minutes, of non-public minutes in public. Unless there are things that need to be discussed in non-public.
I don't know anything.
Okay? All right, then, the only thing in non-public is something that's up for action. If anyone wants
Make
to.
a motion to accept the non-public meeting minutes, April 11th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion that can be in public? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. And that's it. So I can entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, okay, we're done.